Welcome to Exposing the Hidden Reality. I'm Annette, career reinvention coach and caffeine-powered human.
And I'm Sandra, women's life and leadership coach. I bring the woo to our conversations.
And this is the podcast where we call out all the unspoken stuff, biases, outdated expectations, and all the things women navigate in work and in life.
Yes. We bring to light what we see happening. Smart, capable women stuck in the same patterns because no one really talks about what's going on.
We'll bring some difficult truths.
Welcome, insightful experts.
And sprinkle in a little chaos and fun.
It wouldn't be us if we didn't, right?
It's true.
So whether you're walking the dog or tuning in during your commute, we're glad you're here. Let's do this.
Let's do this. You want to do the let's do this together? Like 3, 2, 1, let's do this. All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's do this. Hey, Jen, let's do this.
Let's do this.
I'm so glad
Yeah,
you're
it's so adorable. The whole intro, I was like wrapped with attention. So much fun.
Oh my gosh, that's because we have a wonderful, wonderful producer named Sandra Wind, and she did that for us.
Yes.
So
He's here in spirit today.
right, I know Sandra is in continuing education today, so she can't join us. And honestly, Jen, I think this might be our first meeting on the podcast without one of us here.
Yeah, I know. So let's make sure it lives up to Sandra's amazing standards because we have to do her right while she's not here.
That's true. We do. And I'm sure we'll be great. So, Jen, I mean, I know you so well, and I'm so grateful that you are in my circle of influence in my life. But why I feel like I'd be biased if I'd introduce you. So why don't I let you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little about you, your business, whatever you think is important for us to know.
Sure. Well, first of all, I related so much to the caffeine-powered human part of your intro. I've never noticed that before for some reason. But I, too, am caffeine-powered. And I work as a certified coach and creative facilitator. And so my business is called Creative Groove. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that I've actually been self-employed for 20 years. So I love, being able to run my own business and really help people reach their creative goals. And so my business is called Creative Groove. And every coaching program, every course, every community experience that I offer is rooted in 4 primary areas, which are creativity, visibility, productivity, and authentic self-expression. And I think when those 4 things come together is where you find your creative groove. So I love the work that I do, and I've been lucky to intersect with your and Sandra's work in many ways. And yeah, it's just fun to be here.
Nice. Congratulations. And thank you so much for agreeing to fill in.
Yes,
a
of
little inch
course.
for Sandra. Yeah, I appreciate it. So today, the topic that we chose for you was authenticity in the workplace, or being your authentic self in the workplace. And if you had been a fly on the wall for like the last 5 to 6 conversations, Jen, this is something that seems to be a hot button right now. People are talking about how to be authentic without being fake. And people are also wondering how they can be authentic in the workplace, maybe feeling where, okay, maybe I can't be my truest self. So who am I at work? And then as leaders and employers and organizations, how do you create this space where people feel safe to be their best self so that they can do what they need to do authentically?
Yeah, and feel comfortable to be the fullest version of themselves in the workplace, which only benefits everybody, which I can talk about more in a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because it's such a really big topic right now. And also people are feeling that they have to tone themselves down, right? Maybe not be who they really are when they're at work. Maybe because that's what they were told, or maybe because that's how they were socialized, or maybe because they're not sure how their authentic self will be embraced at work.
Yes. And so, I recently gave a talk on this topic, And one of the statistics that I unearthed while giving the talk, and I'm just referencing it on my screen so I don't get it wrong, but a 2023 study between Deloitte and the New York University School of Law found that 60% of employees say that they cover their true identities at work in order to fit into the dominant culture. So 6 out of 10 employees shield parts of themselves, or they call it covering. They cover parts of themselves, and it can fall into 4 areas. So there's 4 different ways this shows up. So it can be appearance based, where maybe you're changing part of your physical appearance, whether that be the way you dress, or maybe you color your hair, so you're kind of muting that down a little bit, or covering up tattoos, or whatever it might be. So it could be appearance based. It could be affiliation based, which means that you're kind of muting any visible connections you may have to cultural, religious, or community groups.
Mm.
It could be advocacy based covering. So that means you're not necessarily speaking up about issues that could impact your identity group. And then lastly, association based covering, which means that maybe you're not associating as much or distancing from those who share the same identity as you. So it can be very isolating. And like you said, it's the exact opposite of authenticity at work, because you feel like you can't be your full self or represent who you truly are in your background.
Yeah, and what a way to go into work every day. I can
Right.
imagine if you're remote, right? If you're masking or covering who you are, you might not have so much incongruency, right? You might feel okay about it because, like, I'm not looking you truly in the eye, Jen, right? We're remote right now. But if you're in person and you are hiding certain parts of yourself or 4 parts of yourself, like you're saying, um, how can you do your best work?
Well, exactly. Yeah, and it's twofold, because the workplace isn't getting the best of you, and you aren't getting to show up, as your true self. And so I think one of the reasons this is a hot button topic is it is so prevalent. 60% of employees feel that they have to do this at work.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in starting conversations about how can we empower authenticity at work, and how do we shift the culture so that it does reflect the kaleidoscope of amazing humans that are not homogenous, but look different and have different personalities, and have so much to offer when we truly invite 100% of who they are into the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's probably open to the employer or the workplace or the organization to make sure that there's comfort in creating this safe space, but also making proper hiring decisions so that you have leaders, more senior team members that are welcoming differences.
Mhm.
So I think these are indicators that I tell my clients about when they're interviewing, right? When you're walking into the place, what do you see? Do you see a bunch of people that look exactly like you, that are dressed exactly the same? Or do you see people expressing themselves, right? Does somebody have like a little pink hair color or a little peekaboo color sticking out? Is there somebody maybe dressed what we would consider unconventional? Just looking for differences of ideas or opinions expressed in a physical way that we can see.
Yes, and one of the companies that came up again and again when I was researching my talk was Zappos.
Okay.
Apparently, Zappos, well, first of all, their company motto is, create fun and a little weirdness. So it's like you get to wear your weird at work.
Yeah.
But, in researching, watching some YouTube videos, reading articles about the company culture, they encourage their employees to dress up both their wardrobe and their workspaces to reflect who they are. And so, you watch a video of a cubicle tour and you see things like beach umbrellas and Superman capes and inflatable monkeys. And if you're someone who has a really big value around fun, or, whimsicality, or just work not having to be total drudgery all the time, that really speaks to that value of yours. And so, like you said, it's like noticing those things when you go into a company for the first time for an interview, or just picking up on those cues, can mean so much about whether you can truly be your authentic self if you do get hired there.
Yeah. That's
And also,
amazing.
like, one of the things I talked about too, like, you don't know, some people aren't into those things.
Sure.
Not everybody wants to have a wild and wacky cubicle, so sometimes it can be more subtle than that. And so I don't want everyone to feel like one of the pictures I showed in my presentation was, office space where they're wearing the pieces of flair. So it's like, we don't want it to be mandatory fun, right? But
Right.
if you want to dress up your workspace or your wardrobe to reflect things that don't maybe feel as conventional in the workplace, then you have the freedom to do that. But if that's not your jam, that's an authentic expression too.
Yes, I completely agree. Right. So let's say you're in a fun workplace and everybody okay to be the person that didn't. Um, but whatever you think is important, or like even as far as like having a picture of your kids out or having a picture of your significant other out, like there may be people that don't have any of that. And then there's this one client that I have in my life, and they are actually asked to cleanse their desk
Hmm.
when like the executives come in.
Okay.
So you can be whoever you want unless the executives are here. Then you can't be anybody. We need you to just have like a clean workspace, which I
Right.
think,
And what message is that sending?
yes, it sends a bad message that you can't actually be somebody at work. You just have to get the results we tell you to get.
Right. Right. And so one of the things I also talked about, and I'm trying to find the info here. One of the things I also talked about in the chat was Google did a whole big project called Project Aristotle a few years back. And you kind of made me think of it just now because it basically seemed like they were wanting them to compartmentalize the personal parts of their lives at work.
Mm.
But in Project Aristotle, what they found was that when employees felt like they could go beyond small talk and share kind of the major life challenges they were facing outside of the confines of the workplace, it created a deeper sense of psychological safety. So if they were facing an illness, or if maybe they're a caretaker, or they have something else big going on in their life, but they felt like they couldn't bring that in and talk about it at work, um, they didn't feel safe to be their truest and fullest selves. But when they created an environment where people could be real with each other about, the bigger picture of their lives, it created so much more. And in the research I did, that sense of psychological safety is probably the number one tipping point for whether people feel like they can be authentic at work. So it may seem like personal and professional, there should be a line divided, but honestly, all of us, especially in the work from home culture, there's so much overlap. And, if you think of it as Venn diagram, it's like most of us are living in that sweet spot where life and work intersect so much. And so if we feel like we can't represent that part of our lives in the workplace, there's like a weird disconnect there.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the part that feels icky, and that's the part that I think makes people nervous about return to office too. So,
Mm,
huge numbers of companies are requiring people to either return to the office full time or
mm,
to return to the office more frequently. Like a big company in our area is Sherwin-Williams. So in January of next year, they're requiring more in-office work. And I don't know much about their culture. And some people are like, yay, I'm loving it. And some people I hear are a little more like, ugh, I don't want to do that. So depending on where you stand, making sure that the in-office culture, the return to office culture is a positive, reaffirming place for people to work. So how can companies do that, Jen? How can they create
mm.
this culture?
Well, some of the things I talked about was that, first of all, it can start in the conference room,
Mhm.
during brainstorming meetings, right? Because a lot of people feel like they get shut down, during brainstorming, or they may not even feel comfortable bringing up maybe things that feel fresh or different. Like they feel like they have to stick to the status quo. And so, and yes, I did show a picture of High School Musical when I talked about that.
Of
I
course
sing
you
that song
did.
all the time with my kids. Uh, but there was a study that compared average performing innovation companies and like leading top innovation companies. And what they found was that the employees at the average performing companies were wait, let me make sure I get this right, 3.6%. No, not percent. 3.6 times more likely to fear negative career repercussions when they shared unorthodox or risky ideas. So there was a big difference in the performance of the company when employees were really empowered to go full out in their brainstorming and not feel like they had to censor it. And so, some of the ideas that I shared were just taking on better and best brainstorming practices.
Mhm.
Like you could even start a meeting with let's do only bad ideas. Like, let's just do only bad ideas and have some fun with like, these are bad ideas, but often bad ideas can be a stepping stone to thinking differently, or ideas that might actually be a fit that we may not have come up with otherwise. Or, you can take a cue from the improv world. A lot of people are familiar with the term yes and mentality, which is basically where we're building on ideas instead of tearing each other down. So it's like, we're not just going to immediately shut things down. We're going to hear it out and build so that we can kind of have collaborative brainstorming, as opposed to, okay, this person has good ideas, this person has bad ideas. Let's see what happens when we can kind of combine our collective creative energy and build together, instead of just shutting things down right and left. And I think when people feel like they can really let their brain play inside those brainstorming sessions, then their true creativity and innovation starts to emerge.
I agree. And brainstorming is one of those things that we think we know how to do very well, but really we don't. So I love this idea of bad ideas. That is amazing, because why not get all the embarrassing, weird things out to begin with? And then you can lay the foundation of like, where's there truth in this, or where is there something that's valuable that we can all agree on? And starting at a place like you were saying, weird. Let's put the weird out there to begin with. And then we can kind of get down to business. And some brainstorming rules that people don't stick to is like, we're putting out the idea, but we're not judging it till later. And we all want to be heard. So I think we start judging right away instead of just putting the ideas out there.
Right. So if you felt like you were in a room where bad ideas weren't welcomed and you weren't sure if your idea was, quote, bad, you might not speak up at all. But if it was like, hey, let's throw those bad ideas out on the table, then it's like there's no threshold as far as to what makes a good or a bad idea. We're just ideating together. And you can bring up whatever comes to mind, and we're going to accept that and celebrate it.
I love
and
that.
then another thing I talked about too was how this can happen during onboarding. So I talked about a couple different companies that are doing interesting things. So there's a company called Storytelling, and they actually have a great white paper and case study available to anyone on their website, which I downloaded and read for the purposes of my talk. But they make a personalized welcome video for their new hires, in which different members of the team that they're going to be working on kind of reiterates the reasons that they thought they'd be a great fit for the job. And so people feel kind of celebrated and appreciated for what they uniquely bring to the table right out of the gate. And so it's like, wow, like I was actually chosen for this job, and they appreciate these things that make me me, and that just empowers you from minute one, because you feel like I can be me. And that's actually why I was hired for this, And then there's another company. It's an IT company. I think you pronounce it Wipro, Wipro.
Okay.
But they did an experiment where they asked new employees to spend a half hour just simply journaling and reflecting on what makes them unique and how they can bring their authentic self to work. And what they noticed 6-7 months later, they came back, they did a comparison between people who'd been through the standard onboarding and then people who had done this experiment. And they found that those who had spent a little bit of time just journaling about what made them special and how they could bring that into their job description, they found that those employees were more likely to still be with the company 7 months later. And they identified as being more engaged in their work. So giving that kind of pre-thought to not only can I be authentic at work, but like, how can I be even more, authentic and bring myself into my job description and basically make it my own.
I love that. Oh my gosh, such great ideas. And I'm thinking like those are really low barrier to entry ideas, right? Like everybody makes videos nowadays. So if you get all the people that were touching that new employee in the interview process, and you ask them to record a few thoughts about what struck you as unique and interesting about that person, or you ask the new employee in their onboarding session to journal a few thoughts.
Right. Because if you think about it, like if there's a new CEO or something, there's probably going to be some sort of big assembly where everybody's going to clap and cheer and like, we're going to celebrate this amazing person. But it's like, what if it was an entry level hire who we had this celebratory video of, we're so excited that you're here. And it's because you bring these unique qualities to the table.
Yeah. Onboarding is one of those things that as a career coach, I prepare my clients for, especially in the event that they end up onboarding themselves, which in fact, I think the statistic I remember, Jen, is only 24% of companies admit to a formal onboarding process. So, taking your new employee to lunch their first day is not onboarding. It's a piece of onboarding, but it is not
Right.
onboarding. So the more you can do to be very thoughtful in that process, it goes well for retention. It goes well for the employee feeling like they have a place to belong to. And it goes really well for the work that they do and the investment that they feel in the organization. So,
Yeah. Because I think so many people are disillusioned for different reason these days, and often for good reason, right?
right. No, yeah, for
Sometimes
sure.
we just feel like a cog in the wheel or like a number. And so if it's like, no, like we see your humanity, we see what makes you special. It's like, oh, like I'm not just some nameless, faceless person, moving the needle for the bottom line or whatever cliche you want to throw in there. Like I can be me, and I'm around people who appreciate that person.
Yes. Oh, that's
And I'm
lovely.
not trying to be Pollyanna, right? Because I know that this shift in culture doesn't happen overnight. But
No.
like you said, these are simple things. These brainstorming things, you could walk into your next meeting and do that, right?
Yeah.
You could bring the personalized welcome video, maybe just for your team, maybe not for your whole company. Like
Yeah.
try it for your team and see if that changes anything. So I don't think any of these ideas are pie in the sky or anything like that. But I think when you start incorporating them incrementally, they can make a pretty significant shift.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let's talk a little bit about the pieces of ourselves that might be authentic, but maybe aren't the best pieces to show
Mm,
at work.
okay.
So like I'm thinking of like when you're having a bad day and most people would probably just retreat, right? And be quiet.
Mhm.
I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm having a bad day. Or maybe something's going on personally and you're thinking, or the story you're telling yourself is, I'm not going to bring this part of me to work today. I'm going to try and leave it in the car. Bring the other pieces of me in the office for 8 hours. And then when I leave, I have to go back to dealing with whatever I'm dealing with. How do you think that doesn't empower
Mm.
somebody to be their authentic self?
Well, first of all, if you're listening to this podcast and you just resonated with the question that I asked, or that made you think of something you're facing at work, I would definitely check out Project Aristotle by Google, because it talks a lot about why people should be, allowed to say they're having a bad day or not have to compartmentalize in that way. But
Yeah.
Annette, you just made me think of something when you said that. I'm not saying this is a good idea. I get to throw out bad ideas here, so I'm going to say
We
it.
do. We're bad idea brainstorming right now.
But I'm thinking about when I go to my bar 3 class, okay, which is like a Pilates bar class. They have this, it's like a postcard or something, or like a little badge you can put on your mat. And
Okay.
it basically says, I'm okay with you kind of adjusting my body position, or I'd rather not be bothered, or, like it shows your comfort level with how they might interact with you in the room when you're working out. And so you just made me think about, and again, not saying this is necessarily realistic, but some interesting food for thought. What if people had something on their cubicle that was like, I'm having a tough day today. I just want to hunker down and like get stuff done, or like, hey, I'd love to go to lunch with someone today, or whatever it might be, but kind of that like and I know at networking events they have that too. Like sometimes they have introvert stickers or things that kind of show
Mm.
your mindset as you're coming into a situation. So it might be interesting to think about, look, if I was up working till 3 a.m. last night and I'm like running on fumes,
Yeah.
how do you say that in a way that is kind of accepted company wide as how people might show more compassion when dealing with you, or deal with you more effectively that day? So that could be an idea.
I love that idea. Yeah, we had done this is a job I had like 3 corporate jobs ago. But we had done like a fun personality test. Like, I don't know, are you a peacock? Are you I don't remember the rest of them. I only remember peacock because that's what I was on this particular
You were,
test.
of course you were.
Of course I was. I know, John. You find this hard to believe. But regardless, then we had like little stickers that our team used and we put them by our name tags on our cue balls. And then if you were walking up to someone, you could be like, oh, I'm a peacock. Or my friend Jen is not not a peacock, but you would like her because she's also, I don't know, what is the other one? Like an owl or something.
Okay.
So, and then we all had like these little bits and bites about how peacocks interact with owls, for example. And if I would encounter an owl, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm a peacock. And you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm an owl. And then we'd have something to talk about. It gave us a common ground. And then it made conversation really possible when you might not know that person very well. So I love this idea reversed, like, hey, I'm just not feeling it today. Like maybe I have my yellow light up instead of my green light.
Right.
And right, it makes it okay. It gives you space to be feeling however you're feeling, but then it doesn't put pressure on me to try and understand it in the moment. And we can talk about it tomorrow, maybe when you're a green light and I'm a green light, for example.
Right. And it's like, you probably can't have your red light sticker up all the time at work because that might be problematic. But when you need to pull the trigger on that, it might be helpful to be able to communicate that to your employees in a way that feels safe and not like you're going to be judged or feel like you're not a team player. So.
Agreed. Oh,
and actually, what you said about the peacock assessment, I'm not familiar with that one, but
I don't remember what it was. I'd have to call my friend Jenny Ellison. If you're listening and you're watching, what was that personality?
Yes, please comment. I could check it out. But there's so many great, we have like VIA character strengths, Clifton strengths, like all the different leadership circle, different assessments you can take. But I feel like, and again, I may be wrong, but I feel like a lot of companies do those, but then they don't really use the information in any sort of significant way, maybe afterward. Maybe they do, I don't know. But that could be another thing, is thinking about different personality types or different types of leaders working together. How can we make sure that each of them feels empowered to stay in their strengths and what makes them them, instead of having to conform? So those leadership assessments that many companies do have useful information about that.
Yeah. And I like what you're saying is use it in a way that helps people communicate who they are and not use it to penalize, right? I don't know if you've taken assessments like that when you were in a corporate environment before and you're like, oh gosh, now people know XYZ about me. And am I going to be expected to perform at such a level? Or let's use it in a way that empowers instead of steals power away.
Right. And celebrates. Like those strengths assessments show so many different, each of us is almost like a snowflake, right? Like we each have our own different set of strengths that we bring to the table. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you're interested in this topic, next Monday, I want to say it's the 10th of November.
That is the 10th.
I'm hosting a free lunch and learn. I'm not the one facilitating it.
Okay.
It's amazing career coach, Kristen McLaughlin. She will be leading it, but she's going to be talking about, she's a Clifton Strengths facilitator. And she's going to be talking about how to leverage your strengths to advance your career. So if anyone's interested in that, it is free. It is on Monday the 10th. It's online at noon Eastern. So just comment or something, and I'm happy to get you that Zoom link so you can join us.
Oh, that would be great. And I can put it in the comments later.
Awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. Ooh, that sounds like such a good conversation.
Yeah, because often we don't get time to, let's say our employer doesn't invest in something like that, we don't get that time to just take a step back and think about, what is my amazing kaleidoscope of strengths I bring to the table. And it's kind of fun to explore that. So I encourage you, if that's something you want to do, come take a listen and see what comes out.
Yeah. And I love StrengthsFinder because it's often rooted in your values. And then when you're clear on your values, you're clear on your behavior that follows those values. And so I think it's a really great place to start. And I talked about this in my book, Jen, and I also talk about it in my coaching, but there's this concept called the personal user manual, which I learned about on LinkedIn like way many years ago. But it's this concept that if you know yourself well, then you can coach people how to interact with you. So that if you know that like, hey, I need time to review information, or if you're me, I'd be like, yeah, I love to talk about big ideas, but then you need to know if you're working with me that I need you to follow through on making those big ideas happen. Then we can interact really well and we can work together. And then we can also be our authentic selves because we've defined our roles and how we need to work together in a relationship to make success happen as partners.
Yeah, in reading your book, Annette, that was one of the pieces that stood out to me the most. And I think that's actually a more meaningful version of what I was talking about with the bar 3 type thing of here's how I'm feeling today. Like that's actually a more meaningful version of that, is like, here is how I'd like to receive feedback. Here is how I feel most supported, or that type of thing. And in coactive coaching, we call that designing your alliance. So
Mm.
anytime I start working with a new client, we design our alliance together of, what's going to make you feel most supported, most able to open up. And everyone's different. Like I remember a client once, she said, if you're even 1 minute late to the session, I will be so upset the whole time that I won't be able to benefit from it. So being able to say things like that, like lateness was like or punctuality, I should say, was a huge value for her.
Yes.
And I don't know that I ever would have known that. And maybe she wouldn't have felt comfortable telling me, but because I asked, she did. And then it was like, I knew that, hey, look, you got to be spot on to the minute, with this person. So, again, that personal user manual, it's like those values, those things that will make them feel most optimal and able to show up at 100% authentic and ready to rock at work. Your personal user manual is like a playbook for that.
Yes. And it's such a level playing field because, right, I could use that as an entry level new hire and I could still communicate with my boss because I'm just telling you what you need to know to work with me.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
I mean, imagine if that was part of the onboarding process.
Yes.
Because sometimes people don't even get a chance to put a fine point on that and think about, oh yeah, it does really trigger me when someone's late to a meeting and then I can't concentrate. Like maybe they haven't put 2 and 2 together with that yet. But if you ask them questions, it's like, oh, like here's my secrets to success, or successful collaboration, I should say.
Right. Or what if that value on punctuality is not a value across the organization? Wouldn't it be great if somebody told you the first day that you started, like, oh, Jen, thank you for telling me. I don't want you to be upset. Every meeting you go to, meetings traditionally start here around 5 after the scheduled time.
Yes.
Like, don't frustrate yourself. It's not you. It's not a disregard for your time. It's just the culture of how things are here. And then you could adjust your expectations and not be so hyper vigilant about it and maybe let it bring a bad taste in your mouth for like just something that you can't control, right? Something that's
Yes.
not
Well,
an
and that can help misunderstandings too, because let's say the thing started 15 minutes late, and I'm just going to use the name Tina. You notice Tina's like seems agitated the whole meeting. You're not assuming it's about you. You kind of know, like, oh, she's mad that it started 15 minutes late. Because sometimes if somebody just seems like an angry energy, we read into it and we're like, oh, what's happening? They're going to quit and all the, And so, but if you kind of know, like, look, like she expects things to start on time, then you're clear on maybe why she was agitated during the meeting. So it just sounds like we're talking about taking the time to know each other, truly know each other, and empower each other to be at our best at work and understand if we're not at our best, this might be what's at play.
Mm-hmm. So good. And Jen, so you gave this talk. I don't know if you want to talk about the organization.
Yes, I would love to.
Yeah, talk a little about the organization and then talk a little bit about how you had this unconventional approach to your talk. Because I think it's the best part of the story.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So long story short, over the year, well, first of all, so as a coach and facilitator, I lead workshops both for, the community, but also inside corporate settings. And I actually taught for Cleveland State University's employee wellness program for a few years. So I love like going into companies and doing programming around creativity and, self-discovery and personal and professional development. And so I started following this organization called Disrupt HR, which is basically almost think of it as TED Talks for the HR world.
Okay.
And I kind of think of it as like hot takes on HR. So there's all these people that go up there and they share, a 5-minute talk on a topic that relates to HR, but they make it fun, relevant, timely, sometimes even a little cheeky. There's a lot of profanity that flies. Like it's not boring, it's interesting. And I started paying attention just as someone who's interested in working alongside HR professionals to deliver this type of programming. And so I went to the Disrupt HR event last year in 2024. And this year, I had an idea for a talk. And so I applied and I was chosen, which was so exciting. And by the way, I should share too, So there's chapters all over the country. So we have one here in Cleveland, but there's many events, and I believe even in Canada, the US. I don't know beyond that, but there's Disrupt HR events all throughout North America at the very least, and maybe even beyond that. I'm not sure. But so I was chosen this year. And so my topic was let those freak flags fly, empowering authenticity at work.
Okay.
And I spoke on this very topic. And so since I was talking about flying your freak flag, I thought, okay, what if I dressed up in like a spacesuit and I had a giant freak flag and I kind of planted it in the ground as like, here's your invitation to create a brave new world with me and brave new spaces where people can thrive as their true selves. And so that's what I did. I wore a spacesuit and I was the first speaker, which was kind of hilarious. So I kind of felt like Elle Woods in the bunny suit. Like I walked out and everyone's like, what is happening right now? You know? And so it was just really fun. And I'm going to share the link to my talk in case anyone wants to watch it after listening to this. But I have to share, and by the way, I firmly believe in no disclaimers. So this is just like an FYI, not a disclaimer. But I wore this lip gloss, and not knows this. I wore this lip gloss that was so sticky. And it started like sticking my lip to my gums about halfway through my talk. And so I'm trying to like navigate this during my talk. So you can kind of see me like doing like this a little bit. So if you watch it, just know that I was having some lip gloss challenges during it, but I was so happy with how the talk went. And more importantly, to get people thinking about this topic, because like you said, Annette, it is on the radar. And I have a lot of ideas about how people can kind of bring their weird into the workplace and let the freak flags fly. And I don't think weird is a 4-letter word. It's not a 4-letter word, but it's also not a 4-letter word, right? So I want employees to be able to have that purple hair or the tattoo or think differently or whatever it might be, or bring their cultural, this is bigger than just what we wear. This people cover their cultural background, their ethnic background. There's many reasons people cover, and as a white person, like I can't speak to that lived experience, but I think it's so important, that everyone can show up to work as themselves. And so the proverbial freak flag applies to so many things.
Yes.
And I just think it's an important conversation.
And I'm just figuring in my mind that you are sort of like this 1981 MTV astronaut coming on TV for the first time instead of like old school, like 60s astronaut. Like,
yes, that is exactly what I pictured. And the image I chose for my last slide I wanted to show like a GIF or a GIF of someone like landing on the moon and like planting the flag, but it was just a static image, but the MTV was definitely what I was trying to emulate there. So I'm glad you were picking up what I was putting down.
Gen Xer here, Gen Xer here.
Exactly.
Awesome. So I guess we're kind of winding down. We've been going for a little bit today. What would you say to somebody that is trying to improve their company culture and trying to build a place where their employees can feel authentic? What would you give them as like top 1 or 2 tips to do to help build this safe place?
Well, first of all, I guess I would encourage you to just have a little compassion for yourselves, because these are societal, standards that have been put in place for many decades, and we still have a lot of carryovers from kind of like the old guard, the way things used to be done. And so we're kind of reinventing, like, what does the workplace look like? And I think that conversation started with work from home, remote, like that was a huge shift that took place. And now we're looking at, well, why does the workplace have to look the way it always looked? How can we be more authentic? How can we bring the 2025 of it all, into, I don't know if that made sense, but I feel like I don't want employers to make themselves wrong for that, because it's like, you can change at any time. You can be empowered to shift the culture in your workplace. It doesn't have to look the way it always looked, and invite your employees into the conversation. Ask them, like, do you feel like you cover at work? And if so, why is that? What could we do to help you feel more empowered to be yourself, to bring your full identity in? And what do you think? Because, let's face it, the workplace is about driving results, driving outcomes. So it's like, if we did that, what do you think would be possible for you? Because it's like, we need to know the promise of the potential of what happens when we are able to do this. And so I think knowing, like, one, it's okay, if maybe you're stuck in the past, but that doesn't mean that that's how it has to be moving forward. And it can be a two-way street with your employees to figure out, like, what's meaningful to them. Is it the cubicle where they can have the wacky fun, or is it more like, hey, we need to have a support group, because a lot of us are caretakers at home, and we want to have like a professional come in and like hold a support group once a month, because we spend 12 hours a day here and we need that option to kind of have that outlet, or whatever it might be. And this might be a little self-serving, but I think, if you want to bring in a third party to do some programming or do some mediation, sometimes it helps when it's a more neutral party coming in and kind of helping shepherd or guide that process along of the discovery. Because, when you're too inside of it, sometimes you can't see beyond, the confines of the workplace. And so consider working with someone like myself. To maybe explore this with you and help you figure out, what are your company's values, what are your employees' values, what is the intersection there, and how can we kind of celebrate and empower all of it in a way that really benefits the company and everyone in it.
So beautiful. Definitely. And it's definitely disrupting. So not only disrupting HR, but disrupting our comfort with the status quo, and really coming in and changing and thinking about, how can I do it differently? Not only for myself, but for everybody else. And then I love what you're talking about is the results that come from that. Because
and by the way, there are a lot of companies like doing this and doing it well too, which is really exciting. So I would love to see that become the norm. And I think it starts with maybe looking at some of these easily achievable ways you can start to fold this in to the workday, and then do it on a bigger scale.
So true. So Jen, if somebody's interested in working with you or seeing some of your programming, how should they get in touch with you?
Yes, you can email me, Jen, Jen, @creativegroove.com. I would love to chat with you, and I do free consult calls. So I'd be happy to just kind of have like a strategy session with you, or just kind of hear from you, like what are you facing in your company or business, and how do you want to better empower your employees and your team to let their freak flags fly.
And on that note, I've got to go put my flag out, because obviously it's not out enough. I'm going to go plant it in my front yard, maybe. And Jen, thank you. Thank you for bringing all of this up and encouraging us to think about things differently for better results and for a better future.
Yeah, I'm excited because life's too short. Life's too short to not get to stand in who you are. And so it's like, let's plant that flag.
Love it. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Annette.
That's a wrap on this episode of Exposing the Hidden Reality. If something hit home or made you snort laugh, tell us.
Seriously, we love hearing from you. Message us, tag us, or send us coffee. We love coffee.
And hey, leave a review. It helps more women find us and boosts our egos.
Which are like fragile, like suspiciously fragile.
True. All right, until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and if all else fails,
blame the dog.
See you
next time.
Wait, did we stop recording?
No, we're still here. You have to push the red button.
Red button. Cool. Just eternal podcast.
Bye.
Bye.